It started as a minor annoyance. A silver sedan parked just a few inches into my designated space. The complex had clear rules: 1 unit, 1 spot, clearly numbered. Mine was 37. And yet, every morning when I left for work, and every night when I came back, that car was there. At first, I left polite notes. Then firm ones. Then I tried calling towing services, only to be told that without a board complaint or clear signage, their hands were tied. So every day, I parked further down the block, rain or shine, lugging groceries across the lot like I didn't pay for a space. The car never moved. No apology, no explanation. Just silence. Mocking, entitled silence. But the thing is, I'm not the kind of person who gets mad easily. I'm the kind of person who plans. And one day, after nearly 3 weeks of having my space stolen, I had an idea. A very, very good idea. If you love stories about petty revenge, poetic justice, and standing up for yourself in creative ways, you're in the right place. Like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more intense, real-life inspired stories. Unit 37 had been mine for over 2 years. When I moved into the apartment complex, the leasing agent made it clear, your parking spot is part of your lease agreement. Nobody else is allowed to use it. For the first 18 months, everything was fine. People respected the lines. We waved at each other in passing. There was peace. Then came the silver Hyundai. It wasn't there every day at first, just sporadically. I assumed it was a visitor, or maybe someone's relative staying temporarily. But within a week, the car appeared every single night in my spot. Sometimes crooked. Sometimes taking up half of the space next to it. No tags. No contact information. I checked with my neighbors. No one claimed it. I left a note. Hi, this spot is reserved. Please don't park here. The next morning, the note was gone. But the car wasn't. I tried again, this time firmer. This is space number 37. It's leased to me. Please move your vehicle or I will take further action. No response. I started parking 2 blocks away, even in the pouring rain, just to avoid conflict. I hated confrontation. But every time I walked past that shiny, smug silver car, I felt rage bubble inside me. Then one night, I saw him. A man. Late 30s. Expensive coat. Sunglasses at night. He stepped out of the car, glanced around casually, and walked straight into Unit 45, across the courtyard from mine. He saw my note still crumpled under his windshield wiper. He didn't care. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I did some digging. Unit 45 was rented by a man named Kyle Dawson, a mid-level banking executive who had apparently just gone through a divorce. I found his name on the intercom list. I even looked up his LinkedIn, VP of something or other at a regional bank. Slick. Buttoned up. Probably thought he owned the whole complex. That would explain a lot. I considered calling management, but I'd heard the horror stories. They took weeks to respond. I needed something faster. So I called the tow company directly. No dice. Unless the complex had signs at the entrance warning about unauthorized parking, they couldn't legally tow. And my building. No signs. I spoke to a board member. She shrugged. We've been meaning to install signage, but there's red tape. Of course there is. Meanwhile, Kyle kept parking in my spot. Every single day. He saw me walking by one evening, me soaking wet from the rain, hauling groceries, and didn't even blink. Just popped open his trunk, took out his gym bag, and walked inside with a smirk. That's when it happened. The spark. The idea. I walked back to my apartment, dripping and seething, and sat down at my desk. If Kyle thought rules didn't apply to him, maybe I needed to create new rules. Rules he couldn't ignore. Rules he wouldn't see coming. And it would start with a fake delivery. I ordered a giant box. Not just any box, a wardrobe-sized moving box from a shipping supply site. Heavy-duty cardboard, almost the size of a refrigerator. I labeled it in bold, black marker. Live bees. Handle with extreme caution. It was empty, of course. But it looked real. Then, using a dolly I borrowed from a friend, I wheeled it down to the parking lot one afternoon and placed it in front of space 37, right in the middle, blocking it entirely. I left a fake shipping label on top, printed from a template I found online. Recipient: Kyle Dawson. Then I watched from my living room window. At 6:42 p.m., Kyle pulled into the lot. He stopped, opened his door, got out, stared at the box. He looked around, confused, irritated, tried to move it, but it was too heavy for one person. And who in their right mind would want to mess with a box labeled live bees? He paced, pulled out his phone, made a call, then drove off. Not far, just around the corner. But not in my spot. For the first time in weeks, I walked outside that night and parked my car in spot 37. It felt like victory. Temporary? Maybe. But it was the first move in a game I was about to master. The box stayed in place for 2 days. Kyle never touched it. I parked in my space again and again, grinning each time I stepped out of my car. It wasn't just about the spot, it was about the message. You're not untouchable. On day 3, the box disappeared. No one saw who moved it. Maybe management. Maybe Kyle himself, finally brave enough to risk an encounter with bees that weren't real. I didn't care. He had flinched. That was all I needed. But I wasn't done. Next, I printed flyers and posted them discreetly around the complex. They read: Reminder, Spot 37 is assigned to tenant number 37. Repeated violations will be reported. Security cameras are in use. There were no cameras, but Kyle didn't know that. I taped one to the wall outside his building, another near the mailboxes, a third near the entrance gate. That night, I watched him again from my window. He saw the flyer. He paused, looked around, then ripped it off the wall. He parked in a guest spot. It was working. But I knew him by now. His ego wouldn't let this slide forever. And I was right. 3 days later, I came home to find a note on my windshield. Scrawled in angry, slanted handwriting. You're seriously pathetic. It's just a parking space. I smiled as I tucked it into my glove box. Kyle had finally blinked. That note changed everything. It proved Kyle knew what he was doing. No more pretending. No more accidental parking. He saw me as weak, petty, someone he could push. Time to remind him. I was neither. This time, I hit him where it hurt. I knew from our one-sided encounters that Kyle liked things precise. His suits were always pressed. His car spotless. He carried a leather portfolio. Lived by a schedule. So I subscribed him to 15 free mailing lists. Not online, those are too easy to cancel. No, I signed him up by paper. Real, physical junk mail. I filled out those annoying little cards in magazines, luxury watches, yacht rentals, vinyl record clubs, coupon books, garden supplies, and even a fake cat food subscription with Mr. Whiskers Dawson listed as the recipient. 2 weeks later, his mailbox started to overflow. I walked by one afternoon and saw him standing at the mailbox cluster, arms full of junk, fuming. He shoved it all in a bag and stormed inside. Still not enough. Fine. I filed a report with the building management. This time anonymously, claiming Kyle had been aggressively confronting neighbors over shared property. I used phrases like intimidating presence and increasing tension among residents. They had no choice. I knew the board. They documented everything. Kyle got a warning letter. And that's when the parking stopped. For a whole week. I'd won, or so I thought. Then one morning, I stepped outside and found his car in my spot again. But this time, it was worse. He had keyed a message into the side of my door. Park somewhere else. The rage was instant. I stood there, frozen, staring at the scratched letters carved into my driver's side door. My stomach twisted, my throat dry. I wanted to scream, to run to his unit and bang on the door. But I didn't. Because I knew something Kyle didn't. I had installed a dashcam 3 days prior. Just in case. And it had caught everything. Crystal clear footage of Kyle stepping out of his car, checking the area, and dragging a key across my door with zero hesitation. He even glanced around afterward and smiled at the damage. I burned the clip to a flash drive. This time, I didn't go to the leasing office. I went to the police. I filed a report for vandalism and provided the footage. They took it seriously. Destruction of property with video evidence? Case open. Then I made copies of the footage and anonymously dropped one in the management office's mailbox with a note. Unit 45 is damaging tenant property. You'll want to address this before someone sues. But I wasn't done. That night, I printed stills from the dashcam and taped them to Kyle's door. Each image showed him mid-act, key in hand, his face clearly visible. On the final photo, I wrote, "Smile for the judge." The photos didn't go unnoticed. By noon the next day, Kyle's door was bare. The images were gone. But the complex was buzzing. Word spread fast in our little community. I heard whispers near the mailboxes, caught glances as I passed people in the hall. Someone had seen the pictures. Someone always does. For the first time, he was the one under scrutiny. Later that evening, I watched from my window as Kyle pulled in, not into my spot. He parked crookedly in a guest space and marched into his unit, face flushed, jaw tight. He was spiraling. And I wasn't done. That same night, the complex board sent out a mass email. "We are investigating an incident of property vandalism and have reminded all tenants of the consequences of parking violations. Please adhere to your designated spots." It was official. Kyle was cornered. And he knew it. The next morning, something strange happened. He knocked on my door. I opened it just a crack. He stood there in a dress shirt and blazer, holding a piece of paper. His face was a cocktail of arrogance and desperation. "This has gone far enough," he said, holding up a printed document. "I'm submitting a formal complaint against you for harassment." I blinked. Laughed. "You keyed my car." He sneered. "Prove it." I did. His smirk dropped. Click. I shut the door in his face. I expected him to lie low. Instead, he went nuclear. That same week, I came home to chaos. Garbage smeared across my porch. Rotten food. Coffee grounds. Something that looked like cat litter. My welcome mat torn, mailbox open, and worst of all, a cracked taillight on my car. Kyle was unraveling, and he was taking the gloves off. I filed a second police report. Officer Hernandez this time. Young, sharp, and pissed. "We've got enough now," she said. "You'll be hearing from the detective soon. Don't retaliate. Just document everything." So I did. Every coffee ground. Every new scratch. Every grain of dirt he thought would break me, I photographed and logged it. But I also made another move. I contacted a local body shop and got an estimate for all the damage, $1,842.23. I submitted it to my renter's insurance with the police reports. The next day, I received confirmation. Kyle Dawson was being officially charged with vandalism and harassment. They served the papers 2 days later. I wasn't there to see it, but my neighbor, sweet old Mrs. Corbin, told me through her screen door. He looked like he'd been punched in the soul. I smiled. But Kyle wasn't finished. He had one last card to play. At 3:14 a.m., I woke up to the sound of an alarm. Not mine. His. Kyle's car horn blared like it was possessed. I bolted up, pulled back my curtain, and saw flames, small ones, licking the front tire of his silver sedan. Smoke billowed upward. Then came the panicked shouting, the flashing lights, the screech of the fire truck. It wasn't long before the fire was out. The damage was localized, no one was hurt, but the car was scorched and smoking. Kyle stood in a bathrobe, barefoot, arguing with the firefighters, gesturing wildly at the building, pointing in my direction. He accused me. The next morning, 2 officers came to my door. I welcomed them in. Calm. Cooperative. I showed them the security footage. Yes, I had finally installed real cameras. Guess what they caught? Kyle. Earlier that night. Pouring what looked like liquid near his own vehicle. The fire report confirmed, it was an accelerant. He had set his own car on fire to frame me. And failed. He was arrested that afternoon. Charged with filing a false police report, attempted insurance fraud, and reckless endangerment. As they put him in the back of the cruiser, he looked up at my window. For once, he didn't smirk. For once, he understood. I wasn't the one who lost. The courtroom was cold and colorless, like most government buildings. But the energy in the room that day was electric. Kyle sat 2 rows ahead of me, flanked by a lawyer who looked far more confident than he did. His hair was unkempt, his hands shaking slightly as he flipped through a legal pad that looked mostly blank. The judge called the charges one by one. Destruction of property. Harassment. Filing a false police report. Attempted insurance fraud. His lawyer tried to minimize the fire incident, calling it a moment of poor judgment after sustained provocation. That word, provocation, landed like a slap. I'd parked 2 blocks away for weeks. Filed polite complaints. Left notes. Endured vandalism, threats, even a staged fire. And now I was the one who provoked him? Thankfully, the judge didn't buy it. I've reviewed the evidence, she said, and what I see is a pattern of escalating behavior. The defendant was warned, filmed, and given multiple chances to stop. Instead, he chose destruction. This is not about parking. This is about power and entitlement. The courtroom was still as she issued the sentence. 90 days probation. Mandatory anger management. Restitution for the damages, $1, 842.23. And a restraining order. He was not to come within 300 feet of me or Unit 37. As Kyle was escorted out, he looked back, one final time. But I didn't look away. The days that followed felt like stepping out of a storm. For the first time in months, I parked in my spot without tension in my shoulders. The number 37 gleamed beneath my tires like a trophy. Winston, my little terrier, even stopped growling at shadows. The air had changed. Kyle's unit stood dark and silent. A "for rent" sign popped up within the week. His name disappeared from the intercom. Word around the complex was that he'd moved back in with his brother out of town. No one missed him. But the story didn't stop with him. People in the complex started talking to me. Real conversations. One neighbor told me they admired how I kept calm and handled things the smart way. Another confided that they'd had their own problems with Kyle, threats, minor damage, and had been too scared to speak up. I hadn't just won back a parking space. I'd shifted the balance. Management finally installed official signage about towing and assigned spots. They even offered to repaint all spot numbers and update the lease language. Turns out, no one had enforced the rules in years. And me. I volunteered to lead the tenant board. The same tenant board that once ignored my emails. Now, they listened. Funny how things change. There's something I never told Kyle. He assumed I was weak because I never yelled, never retaliated publicly, never confronted him in the hallway. But what he didn't realize was that I chose patience, not passivity. What he also didn't know. I'm a data analyst by profession. That's why everything I did was documented. Time-stamped. Backed up. Built into a timeline that no lawyer could unravel. I played the long game, not out of fear, but by design. Kyle played checkers. I played chess. And when the moment came to strike, I didn't just strike back, I ended the game. Now, every time I walk through the complex and see spot 37, I smile. Not just because it's mine again, but because I know I reclaimed something bigger. Dignity. Boundaries. Control. Kyle thought he was untouchable. But the truth is, no one is untouchable when someone decides to fight back smart. And I'll never be the quiet neighbor again. A month passed. The complex was peaceful again. No trash. No notes. No keyed doors or smug faces. I had nearly forgotten what it felt like to relax. To walk from my car to my door without glancing over my shoulder. Then I received a package. No return address. No markings. Just my name, spelled perfectly, taped onto the front. For a moment, my stomach turned. A flashback to the live bees box I'd placed in Kyle's spot. Had he sent something in retaliation? But when I opened it, my confusion deepened. Inside was a book. A worn hardcover copy of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Tucked inside was a sticky note. You won. But don't think I've forgotten. K. He was still out there. Still thinking about me. Still burning. But instead of fear, I felt power. Because that note wasn't a threat. It was an admission. Even now, he knew I'd beat him at his own game. And if he ever did forget, I still had the footage, the police report, the court documents. And I had something else too. A plan ready for round 2, if it ever came to that. Late one Friday evening, I came home from work to find something unexpected. A car in spot 37. Not Kyle's. Not anyone from the building. A small, beat-up red hatchback I didn't recognize. No note. No tags. Just sitting there. My chest tightened. Was it happening again? I walked past it slowly. Looked in the window. A car seat. Snack wrappers. A faded air freshener hanging from the mirror. It looked harmless. Still, I left a note, firm but kind. Hi there, this spot is assigned to my unit. Please don't park here again. Thanks. The next morning, the car was gone. And in its place, a handwritten note stuck to my door. Sorry. First day visiting my sister. Got lost and panicked. Won't happen again. 2B. It made me laugh. Funny how different things look when you're not already in battle mode. I realized something then. I had changed. I was still sharp, still prepared, but I wasn't angry anymore. I was alert. Clear. The difference between being bitter and being better? It's the moment you realize you've already won. It's been 6 months. The spot has stayed mine, untouched, clean. A new tenant lives in Unit 45 now. Quiet, respectful, parks like a saint. We wave in passing, sometimes exchange small talk. I never told him what happened before he moved in. That story stays with me. The Art of War book sits on my bookshelf. Sometimes I flip through it. Not for strategy anymore, but for perspective. One quote stands out now. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. I didn't scream. I didn't vandalize back. I didn't threaten or confront. I outsmarted. And Kyle? He never returned. But every time I walk to my car, I pass spot 37 and smile. Not because it's mine, but because I know what it cost him to lose it. He played a petty game. I played for peace. And in the end, peace won.